Hi everyone, I'm Rachel, and in this tutorial, I'll show you how to work with shading on a background for any coloring using the Color Therapy app. For an image such as a flat lay like this, there would naturally be shadows around each object. I'll show you how to create a beautiful background that works with the objects in front of it. It also helps to add highlights and shadows to the objects to help create depth. If you want to follow along with me, go under the Classic tab, select Thematics, and then under the Flat Lay tab, it's the third image. For this image, I'm going to use a colored background and then show you how to add shadows to it. So I'll use a pink background. The first thing I'll do is open up the color palette, make sure it's set to solid, and then under the Essential tab, there's a bubblegum palette you can choose, and I'm just gonna grab a salmon color for the background. And what I'll do is just tap to fill the background. So make sure it's just set to the basic pencil and then tap to fill in the whole background. Don't forget the little spaces in between the scissors and anywhere else. Now I'm going to choose a color for the shadows, and it's not going to be black because black can tend to make shadows look flat. So what you want to do for any color is use that shade of color that you have and choose the darkest form of it. So for example, the shade color we'll use for this will probably be a dark burgundy. So back in the palette, under shades, I'm going to select red and then choose, make sure it sets a solid, choose the second to darkest burgundy red color. And you'll do the same thing with any other colors that you choose for a background. So if your background is blue, then you need to use a really dark blue for your shadows. When you're creating shadows, you need to decide where your light source is coming from. So for this example, I'm going to decide that the light source is just going to come from the top and it's going to shine down. That will inform me that the shadows will be darker on the opposite side of where the light is. Now let's open up the toolbox. Make sure our brush is set to advance this time. And I'm going to bring the opacity down to about 30% because I don't want it to be too heavy. And the brush size I will have at 50%. So go ahead and begin outlining each object along the edges very softly. It's barely even going to show up because remember, our shadows are going to be darker on the bottom. So it's going to be darker down here with our light shining where it is. But there still will be a very light shadow around every object. So continue outlining all the objects very lightly. Now the objects that are overlapping each other right here, for example, the scissors overlapping the envelope, you're gonna have a different colored shadow there depending on what color the envelope will be. So it won't be a burgundy, so keep that in mind. So now we're going to add in those core shadows. So core shadows are gonna be the darkest shadows and they'll be the closest to the object. So going back into our toolbox, let's set the size down all the way to 20%. And you can leave it at 30% opacity. So now, keeping in mind that my light source is coming from the very top and shining down, think about that as you go, adding in those core shadows. You're not gonna have any core shadows at the very top of each object. So for example, you're gonna have a core shadow right along this edge of this notebook, and I'm using heavy pressure, trying to make sure that my shadow is as even as possible. And you'll continue in that same way with the rest of the objects. Now, if you need help deciding where to put your core shadows and cast shadows, all you need to do is set a pencil underneath a lamp and see how it shines down on it. Now, I'll finish up the coloring by adding in colors to the rest of the image. All right, so after you're done filling in the rest of the colors, go into the Effects tab, and under Lines, I think the gray lines work really well with this one. And you can choose watercolor under Effects. It works really well for this flat lay. Shading is a great way to complete a background if you don't know how to finish it off. Just remember to keep a consistent light source and use light pressure to create your shadows. Thanks for watching our tutorial. You can get the Color Therapy app for free on the App Store.